Okay, my friends, I'm sorry for the interruption of the last video. There was again a technical difficulty, but okay, the continuation. So once you have settled, you have created wealth, you have created wealth beyond your own needs, right? And you have your cattle. The minute you settle, in fact, you begin to create wealth, right, and begin to create inequality. But okay, these are the stories that we will get to once we get to discuss every civilization that we have. But so going through the looking at the maps, okay, so we have our four river valley civilization, right, the Nile Valley civilization, the Tigris and Euphrates, right, the Indus Valley civilization, and the Huanghe and Huanghe and or Yellow River um, sort of civilizations, right? So so we concentrate on ancient Mesopotamia, right? And you see here, my friends, right? So you see, of course, Euphrates, right? And you see Tigris. What I want you to pay attention to is that if we go on a map, bear with me while I go on a map, and I hope this works for us, right? And we put, we put Tigris and Euphrates, right, on our Google map. It cannot get both of them, so we just put Tigris River, Iraq, right, present day Iraq. And if we go on our map here, the reason I want us to go on this map is, first of all, so now you know how to, search IDs on the map. But I want to also I want you to see, right, the fact here, right, that, okay, if, this is Tigris, right? And also let's get Euphrates, okay. Okay, my friends, Tigris and Euphrates River. Now I want you to pay attention to this thing, right? You can see, Euphrates here on your left and Tigris here on your right. But I want you to pay attention, right? If you follow the course of the rivers, you get close to the Black Sea, right? And you get to these mountainous regions on the northeast corner of your map, where Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Armenia are located, and that is the source of your Tigris and Euphrates, right? The Tigris and Euphrates join. And now going back to our PowerPoints, let me see how I am how I can go back to our PowerPoints. Bear with me a little bit, my friends. So so here we were on the map, and I want to go back on my PowerPoint. And okay, here we are. Thank you very much. Okay, so you see that here Tigris and Euphrates come together, and this that here they form one river until they pour into the Persian Gulf, and well, this area extremely important. Current day Iraq, right? Extremely important for for trade. It has been extremely important for trade for the past, right? 4 millennia, even perhaps longer, right? So you see that the source of Tigris and Euphrates are these highlands, right? Mountains, a very mountainous region here, which we call Caucasia, right? Here is our Caucasia mountains, right? Um, and well, it's not Caucasia mountain. What is that then? We don't want that. Okay, we just want Caucasia. Caucasia, Caucasus, right, of course. Caucasus, right? Mountains of Caucasia, right? And so you see how mountainous this area, my friends, between Black Sea and the Caspian Sea is. That is the source of your Tigris and Euphrates. We will talk about the source of Nile also. Okay, so going back, right? This is where your ancient Mesopotamia, specifically your Sumerian civilization, took shape. Sumerian civilization took shape, right? And one of the centers of this civilization always has been where the Tigris and Euphrates come closest to each other, where you see Akkad and Babylon became later on that as well. And to this day, Baghdad is exactly where it was when it was created in the eighth in the early 9th century CE, early 9th century CE. Okay, my friends. So that is your Tigris and Euphrates civilization. It is in fact one of the first, civilizations that took shape circa 3000 BCE in Western Asia. And you remember that there are a series of mountains here, right? And these mountains are called the Zagros Mountains, right? And when we get Zagros mountains, yeah, and once we go further into discussing our Mesopotamian civilization, my friends, we will notice how. Okay, I'm sorry. I have to do it this way, I guess. Oh no. Yes, okay. 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 So yeah, once we get to discussing Sumerian civilization more, you will see the dynamic, right, of the dynamic of relationship of a king, right, that is sort of becomes the king of one of the cities in Sumeria, right? And the relationship of this king with the people whose name is Gilgamesh, right? Gilgamesh, with the people who are coming down the mountains, coming down the Zagros mountains, right? They could be predatory, right? Because they see the civilization of riches and whatnot. And as we will see, they can be predatory populations as well as sort of as well as collaborative sort of populations with different modes of living, right? So, and then we get to, so just if we go on the map that we have for you, right, you can see, right, this Euphrates usually, well, you later on becomes a sort of border area between major civilizations as well. But okay, to go back to our lecture, PowerPoints, I mean, okay. So here you see the cities, right? The urban centers, right? That begins to develop, right, in various parts of Mesopotamia. You see Ur, you see Eridu, you see Lagash, Babylon, Akkad, and so on and so forth. So this is, right, you have a river valley civilization. By 3000 BC, people have settled around it. They're engaged in intensive agriculture. They create enough wealth to feed people who are not, engaging in agriculture, right, such as ourselves, right, and then all the other elements of civilization will develop from there on, and we will get to it. And well, for one thing, we see how urbanization takes place, right, and we will go further into it as well later. So now, Mesopotamia, and then we come back to Africa, right? And we go to ancient Egypt, right? The civilization of ancient Egypt that is dependent on the Nile, right? And I want you to pay attention here, right? You see, well, we will talk about the two sources of the Nile in a second, but the first thing that I want you to pay attention to here is that because of the fact, right? Because of the fact that that the Nile, right, has is source, right, in we will see in Ethiopia and Uganda, even further to the south of Nubia, right? Because that is the case, right, and the Nile basically is fed by these two sources, Blue Nile and White Nile, that come together, right, and form the Nile River, and then they fall into the Mediterranean Sea. Before doing that, they created delta here, right, which is the most sort of lush part of the Nile. Um, um, so here, my friends, right, is the delta, right, the luscious part of the Nile. But because, the source and the egress are the way that I told you, right, where the river falls into the Mediterranean Sea is actually called Lower Egypt, and this where the sources of the Nile is concerned, yeah, and the rest of it is called Upper Egypt, right? So and now and I forgot to mention to you that the rivers of Tigris and Euphrates, they flood, right? They flood on a very sort of on a, not a very systematic and calculated way, all of a sudden, right? And they can destroy, right? They are the source of life for the Mesopotamian population, and now they are one. Tigris is drying up. Apparently, I just came across this recently. I have to look into it. But they were not only the sources, they gave life, right? But they could also destroy life, right? They could destroy sort of cultivation areas, right? They could deposit and thereby deposit, besides silt, all kinds of other material, right? Here they always create marshland. Okay, I'm sorry. Um, my friends, listen, let me just. Okay. So they could create marshlands here, right, in southern Mesopotamia before they entered the Persian Gulf. So the Tigris and Euphrates flood unexpectedly, right? Because they flood unexpectedly, and because of this, I mean, this being the case, right? The outlook of the population of the civilization that developed in this part of the world, right, was not as optimistic, right, as those that developed on the banks of the Nile, as the Egyptian civilization, because the Nile, right, is very systematic in its flooding, right? You can actually measure time and whatnot by the floodings of the Nile, right? So it makes for therefore a different kind of expectation, right, from life. Yeah, you know what is going to happen. Things are on a regular basis, right? You don't have major upheavals and whatnot. The Nile, right, creates a centralized sort of polity for you, whereas the Tigris and Euphrates, right, being, the rivers moving and flooding unexpectedly and so on and so forth, right, are only conducive to the creation of city states, right, the city states that we talked about, right? So and just one other issue that I want, yes, and the sources of the Nile, yeah, my friends, right? So if you look at the Nile, I have for you also videos that I want you to see on Tigris and Euphrates and the Nile and whatnot, right? And you look at the map of Africa, and you have to ask yourself, why is the map of Africa the way it is? How come there are these straight lines between Egypt and Libya, or between Egypt and Sudan, right? Who carved these entities for you, right? And the answer to that, my friends, is that this is a creation of the 19th century colonial powers, basically the British and the French, right? majorly, and then the Italians and partly the Germans, and later on even the Belgians. I always sort of poke fun of my husband because of this background of the Belge, right? At any rate, so this is what they call, as a result of the 19th century European vying for the riches that was in Africa, including in Egypt and the rest of Africa, right? Where now you see the collections after collections of the antiquities of the Egyptians, right, in the museums of Western Europeans, right, including in the States, that those riches come from the 19th century period of Africa's history and the colonial history of Africa, right? So, and as does the map of Africa, the current map of Africa. But okay, that's for you, for your dinner conversations, my friends, for your general information that you must know your modern history as well. But I want you to look at the map now. Yeah, you look at the map. Well, first of all, I want you to look at the Nile, right? You see the Nile, you see the delta of the Nile, where in Mediterranean you see Cairo and Alexandria, the capital, Cairo, the capital of Egypt, and Alexandria, one of the major cities of Egypt, right, on the Nile. And then you see that the Nile is basically, excuse me, let's go back, that the Nile is created by the confluence of two rivers. One is the White Nile that has its source to the south of it, yeah, in Tanzania, right? Well, I mean, it's a lake that is being shared by Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, right? And that is the Lake Victoria. And the source of White Nile is Lake Victoria, right? And then you see that from Ethiopia, from Lake Tana, right, from the highlands, right, you have the Blue Nile. Yeah, so the White Nile and Blue Nile join together at Khartoum in Sudan, right, and the from then on they pass a number of cataracts, and we'll talk about it. And what you see as the Aswan here, right, is the Aswan Dam that was created 20th century. Aswan Dam that was created in the 20th century by Gamal Abdel Nasser. You see the name written, you see where it's written Egypt. You see the city of Luxor, we'll talk about it. And below that, you'll see Aswan, and you see Lake Nasser. Nasser was a 20th century secular Arab nationalist in Egypt who wanted to unify the Arab world in the face of the colonial powers that were just beginning to leave as a result of these nationalistic movements, right? Europeans were beginning to leave Africa and Asia, on the face of it at least, alone, right? And the Suez Canal, remember one of these sort of bottlenecks that I had we had talked about, right? In this case, coming from the Mediterranean to the Red Sea, right? You ultimately created a canal which is called the Suez Canal in the delta of Egypt, right? And this canal was created by the Achaemenids later, around 500, 400 BCE, the first time, and then in the 19th century by the French and the British. Yeah, the Suez Canal was created, and it connected Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea, and the European colonists, right, in the 19th century, basically the British and the French, were tolling, right? We're tolling the ships that wanted to come from Mediterranean to the Red Sea, because what you know, my friends, right? If you go on your Google Maps, if I take you on our Google Maps again, and then go, say, to Egypt, right? And we go to Egypt, and you look at the map of the world, right? And you see, my friends, okay, if you want to come um, from France, right? And or say you want to come from Italy, right? And you want to go to Iran, right? Italy here, right? Italy, and then you want to go, right, to Iran here, right? Remember, we are the center of the world because our professor is Iranian, right? Okay, that's a joke, you guys, right? Anyway, so you see that if you want to come from Italy to Iran, right? You come to the with ships, right? To carry major cargoes through sea, right? There are two ways for you to come, right? You could either come from the Mediterranean Sea, go west through Mediterranean Sea, get cross the Strait of Gibraltar between Morocco and Spain, and sort of go across Africa, the western part of Africa, this western protrusion of Africa, where Morocco and Western Sahara and the rest, Liberia and Ghana and everything. Yeah, you want to go through this point, and you come and you want to go through. You have to go through southern Africa, south of Africa, with your ship, right? And come through the Indian Ocean, get to the Arabian Sea, get to the Persian Gulf, and go to Iran, right? You have to, in other words, traverse, right, the length of the the second major continent, right, through its western waters, and go through the eastern parts of it, right? I mean, twice really go through and circumambulate basically Africa in order to get to Iran, yeah, or like the Achaemenids did, you can create a canal, right, that basically connects the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea. Therefore, from Italy, you come to the Eastern Mediterranean Sea, you cross the Suez Canal, you get, into Red Sea and Gulf of Aden, Arabian Sea, and east to Iran. Yes, my friends, and even so, I want you to pay attention to the fact that even if you want to come from the Mediterranean, from the waters of Mediterranean through the Red Sea to go to Iran, look, I can close up the Suez Canal for you. I can close out the Gulf of Aden for you, where Djibouti and yeah, and Yemen are, right? Yeah, and no, and I can close the Gulf of Hormuz for you, right? So that you cannot come into the ports of Iran. So there, you see that strategically, right? Strategically, how important this part of the world is, right, for communications between, you know, the uh, the European subcontinent, if you will, right, and the continental Asia, right? Okay, so all of this to say that um, valleys and rivers can be a source of life, right? But they can also be an important source of political they could also be a connecting source, but they could also be a dividing source, right? Bodies of water in general, right? So then now we get to the Indus River Valley civilization, my friends, right? And as you see, bear with me a little bit, okay? Uh, okay, we're having again problems with this, um, with this, um, with this pen of ours. We are having a technical difficulty. So it does not, if I cannot, right, okay. Um, okay, let's see. So I can now open this for you. I don't know what had happened back then, back there. Okay, so now this is, okay, this is supposed to be bigger. Okay, thank you. So now you see the Indus River Valley, right? It is currently, right. I mean, it engages, right. It engages the territories, right. That belong to current day Afghanistan, China, Pakistan, India, right, and even parts of Nepal, right? And this Indus Valley civilization, right, develops around the Indus River, right? But Indus River, remember, in the first module, I told you that you call it Punjab, meaning 5 rivers. Well, here are the Punjabs, right? You see the Indus, the main river, right? Then you see the Chenab River, right? And Ravi River and Sutlej River, right? And so on and so forth, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yes, if I'm not mistaken, right? And they join together, right? Um, Gumal is one of them, I think, also. So, if I'm not mistaken, yeah. So they joined together in order to make the Indus Valley civilization, right? They come from these mountainous valleys, right, of the area here, right, between Afghanistan and China, right? They cross the Hindu Kush mountains and so forth and so on, and they sort of fall into Indian Ocean, right? In the Indian Ocean, and as we shall see, the Harappa civilization, right, develops around the Harappa and the Mohenjo-daro civilizations develop around the Indus Valley civilization um, later on. So now going back to our video, right? The Harappa and Mohenjo-daro civilizations, right? Here, Harappa, right? Mohenjo-daro, Lothal, and Mergar, right? You see the various centers of civilization of the Indus River Valley civilization. And last but not least, excuse me, language, last by not, but not least, is the Huanghe River Valley civilization. And again, my Chinese student, forgive my terrible accent, yeah. The Yellow River Valley civilization, the Yellow River civilization, as you see here, right, located, running from eastern China, right, as such. And again, the Huanghe River has destructive force, and China being populated, right? It has had to reckon with the turbulent currents of the Yellow River, leading to its its very name coming from the fact that these turbulences, right, of the river brings silt, right, taken from the base of the river on its way, right, and making the water actually yellow, right, because of this turbulent nature that it has, right. You see also here on the is further to the south of Yellow River, you'd see the Yangtze River, which is another important river of China. But you see that this is northern China, from east to west, and as we will see, major dynasties, right, major Chinese civilizations, right, developed around this river valley civilization of China. So, okay, going back, my friends. So, yeah, the Huanghe or Yellow River, named for its silt, right? Okay, my friends. So I think I'm going to stop this section here, just to make sure that, I don't lose my sound and everything, and begin with the language group in the next video for us. Yeah? Until a bit later, I bid you farewell, my friends. I hope you enjoyed this session of this part of the module. Bye bye.